Okay, today we're going to be painting the waiting willow. Got a little dog sitting by a willow tree by a lake. Supplies you will need. You'll need a canvas or some sort of paper or cardboard, whatever you want to paint on. A cup of water to clean your brushes. At least 2 different size brushes. You can have more sizes if you want. All right, the paint we're going to use today is going to be purple. I have a deep blue, green, brown, black, and white. Okay, we're gonna get started. My name is Melissa from Paint Party LI, and I'm gonna be painting this along with you step by step. So the first thing we're gonna do is wet the canvas, and this is gonna prime the canvas, get it ready for the paint, so we don't have to use as much water in our brush or as much paint throughout the entire time. It'll stay a little bit more damp. All right, so I'm dipping my larger brush into some water. Nice thin coat all the way down to the bottom. Brushing on a nice thin coat as you go. And you just want to look from the side every once in a while, make sure it's not dripping down. If it is, you want to spread it out. If you're using paper, you do not need to do this unless you're going to do watercolor paper, in which case you'll need to wet it first. We're using acrylic paints today. You can use acrylic or you can use tempera, watercolor, whatever you want to use. Feel free to just draw it along with us, that's fine too, if you don't have the paint supplies. Okay, so we're doing a nice thin coat of water. And then I'm going to dry my brush off a little bit. I'm going to get started by doing a very pale purple and working my way up, adding a little bit more of a straight purple and then a little purple with blue in there. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to pick a spot kind of where my horizon line will be, which is going to be fairly low down, lower than halfway. I'm going to take my big brush, take a little bit of white paint, mix it with some purple. Okay, and then I'm just going to brush all the way across. Again, you want to make sure that your canvas is not dripping wet, because if it is, when you start putting your paint on there, it's going to drip down as well. Okay, so I'm just brushing that across. And I'm going to actually do from my horizon line here, which is going to be a little lower than halfway, I'm going to brush this all the way up to the top, and then I'm going to start adding in my darker and my lighter. So if I just do a coat here of that light purple, going all the way up to the top, just a nice thin coat. Okay, it's okay for it to be a little bit see-through. I have a little bit of white in there, which will stop that from happening. It won't be so super translucent. Working my way across the entire canvas. And you can go around the side edges if you like also. Okay, around the top. All right, now that I've got my light purple in there, you're not going to clean off your brush. You're just going to dip into a little bit of that darker blue. And I've got that darker blue on there, and I'm just going to brush it in a few spots, and it's going to just naturally mix in with that purple that you've got there. And all I'm doing is just breaking up the background a little bit. I'm going to do some towards the top. And I have that dark blue on my brush. Again, I have that light purple in the background, so it's just going to blend right in, which is exactly what I want. If you put it on there and it looks like a solid stripe of just separate color, you just want to take your brush, go across it a few times, drag across, and it'll start to blend in. Okay, you can have them as light or as dark as you want in the background there. If you want to add a little bit more to it, you can. I'm going to clean off my brush. Tapping it down to the bottom of my cup, I want to get all the paint out, and then I'm just dabbing it on the paper towel just to dry it off a little bit. I'm going to go in there with a little bit of that straight purple also, so I have a little bit of straight purple on there, and I'm just going to pick a spot and I'm going to brush back and forth just to kind of break this up so it's not just those 2 colors. Again, the way you get it to blend into the other colors is by brushing with the new color right over the edge of the old color. Okay, so I feel like that's enough of a difference. I'm gonna go and work on the bottom now as well. So I'm gonna clean off my brush, tapping it down to the bottom of my cup. And I'm actually gonna start this one with a light blue. So I'm gonna use that dark blue with some white, dab a little bit of white on there, grab just a little bit of that blue. I want it to be pretty pale. Okay, and I'm gonna start right at the horizon line there, and I'm gonna paint everything below that with that blue and white mixture, going all the way down to the bottom. Again, you can go around your side edges if you're working on a canvas. You can finish off the edges there. Okay, so now the same concept that we did on top, where I started with that base color and then I added to it, we're gonna do the same thing. You don't need to clean off your brush. I'm gonna dip into a little bit of purple. And then I'm just gonna pick a few spots, drag it back and forth, and I'm gonna do the same thing with a little bit of that blue. Okay, you can even mix the blue and purple together if you want. Pick a spot, drag it in there. Okay, I'm just kind of dragging it across, mixing here and there. Okay, once you get enough in there, you're going to clean your brush off. Now the next part we're going to work on is putting in this land right here. Now, it doesn't matter how many little bumps you have as you go across. You just want to have somewhere where the tree is going to sit, and then I like it to go down a little bit, come back up into a hill. So when I do this, I'm going to mark it off first with my brush, and then I'm going to fill it in. So I'm taking my big brush. You're welcome to use your smaller brush for this as well. And I'm going to take some green paint and mix it with a little tiny bit of black. Now, when you mix black paint into anything, you have to be real careful because it does take over very quickly. I just want a slightly darker color, deep kind of olive green. Okay, with that brush, I'm going to mark off. First, I'm going to make a line across where my horizon is. Okay, with that dark greenish black color. Now I'm going to make a little hill over here for my tree to go on. And I'll give it a couple little tiny bumps in the middle, and then I'm going to have it come back up on the other side. I'm just going to fill that in with my big brush. If your paint underneath is still real wet, you can always blow dry it a little bit or give it a couple of minutes before you go over this. But this paint does dry very quickly. It's just regular acrylic paint. Okay, I'm just filling that in. Now, I'm going to put that brush in the water. We're going to be switching over to the smaller brush. So I'm going to start putting the details in, all the smaller things. So what I'm going to do is basically with my smaller brush, draw this tree in. And then we'll be putting everything else in that goes with it. So before I get started on the tree, what I want to do is put the moon in there. And I'm going to put the moon over here on the right. I'm going to use my smaller brush. I'm just going to dab a little tiny bit of water on it, and I'm going to grab some white paint. Okay, now when you make a circle, easiest thing to do, hold it real close to the bristles, right on the metal part. That's going to give you better control, kind of like you're writing with a pen or a pencil. Hold it real close, and then just make a circle. Now, you're just going to make, doesn't have to be any specific size, make a circle. And then what you're going to do is just step back, look at it and say, where do I need to round it out a little bit? So I advise making it a little tiny bit smaller than you think you need to. This way, when you fill it in and you kind of round it out a little bit, you don't have a gigantic circle of the moon in there. Okay. Just doing a thin coat. It's okay to see through it a little bit. I don't need it to be stark and dark. While I have this here, I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom, a little bit smaller, right down in line. So this is the reflection of it. Again, it's okay to mix with that background color. I'm just want it to be a little bit lighter. smaller, down kind of in line. You're gonna clean off your skinny brush. Okay, for this next step, what I'm gonna do is use black, and I'm going to use black to make it like a silhouette, and I'll go back over it and add a little brown into the top of it. If you don't have brown, that's fine too. If you wanna just use black, you don't need to do that step. So I'm using my smaller brush, and I have a little bit of black paint. And now I'm gonna start to shape the tree. So when I do this, the things I'm thinking about is not the thickness, because I'll go back in and make it thicker. So I'm gonna do like a main branch that comes over, and then I'll start having all the branches come off of it, okay? You don't wanna go too crazy with this. Maybe 5 or 6 big branches that come off. Okay, so again, I have black paint. I'm gonna come up here very gently, just placing in kind of a marker for where it's gonna go. Okay, so that's my first part of the trunk. I'm gonna come in here and make it a little thicker. Give it a little width, fill it in, so I have an idea of what I'm looking at here as I go. Now, I'm gonna start to bring this up and across. And remember that these are not gonna be as thick as the trunk. You want them to be a little bit thinner. So I'm gonna come up, and the first one I'm gonna do is gonna come down and across the moon. Okay, I'm not applying any pressure, I'm just kind of dragging that brush across. I'm gonna do another one that comes off of this tree trunk and comes down. And I'm just kind of dragging it very gently as I go. And then you wanna split it. Okay, and that goes for this guy too. You wanna give it a couple of little splits of branches that come off of it. And this is going to be like a weeping willow, so it's going to be the kind that kind of comes up and the branches kind of hang down a little bit. I'm going to come up here and do another one coming from the base of this trunk, and it's going to come up and kind of crisscross over these. It just kind of doesn't matter exactly where they are, but what I'm thinking about as I put these in there is how I want to split up some of the empty space in there and kind of just break it up by putting a branch in there. Right, so I'm going to do another little one that splits off of that, maybe one more right here. The less you press down, the skinnier your branch is going to be. Okay, for the ones that are on the left over here, these come up and then come down. So it's like they're all coming up from the middle and then sprouting out. So I'm going to do the same thing right here. And then maybe I'll just do one more that kind of comes up and goes off the edge of the canvas. Okay, splitting those as well, giving them little skinny branches that come off of it. Okay, as many or as few as you want, that's completely up to you. Okay, so I have the main part here, that's the trunk of the tree, and then all the little branches that come up and go over. I'm going to just extend this one so I have a little bit more of my empty space kind of filled in over here. Okay, and then you're going to clean off that brush. Now, while those branches are drying, we're going to work on putting in some of the reflection down on the bottom here. Okay, so I'm going to start with that green and black mixture. I'm adding a tiny bit more black into it this time. This way it's a little bit deeper down in that reflection. And now I'm not going to paint the exact same thing like a whole mirror image. I just want to do a few little brush strokes that kind of go underneath what I've painted, leaving a little bit of space of the water in between there, going all the way across. And I'm making this one a little bit bigger because this is where the big hill is. Okay, I don't want to do a ton. Cleaning off the brush, I'm going to go in there and do a little bit of a reflection of a tree as well. When I do that, it's going to be very loose feeling. It's not going to have every single branch that I have up here. It'll have a few, just to suggest that we're looking at a reflection of it. So I have black paint. When I do it in the water, I don't just paint it in the same way I did solid here. I'm doing little short brush strokes, horizontal. Okay, so I'm going to do a few here, kind of giving that look of where the tree trunk is, right? And now this, you can kind of just drag it along. You don't have to do short little brush strokes, but you're very gentle and don't do a full one. And what I mean by that is kind of just drag it across. Drag a couple this way. You don't want to do all of the branches, just a few, so it looks like kind of the suggestion that it's there, not a full mirror image. And then you're going to clean that brush off. Okay, the one thing I do want to do is continue one of those branches across my moon over here, because I did that up there. There we go. Okay, so I'm cleaning off that brush. I'm going to put that little puppy in there next, and then we're going to start working on all the little flowering parts of the tree. Okay, so with that tiny brush, I'm doing black paint. It's just going to be a little silhouette of a dog. When I do this, I'm going to start, again, anytime I use my brush to draw something or make a skinny line or any sort of detail, I'm holding it really close to the bristles. And I'm not going to press down very hard because I want to draw with it and get a skinny line. Okay, so I'm going to do an oval shape, just like that, just above where I want him sitting. Okay, and then I'm going to fill that in. That's going to be the main part of his body. Okay, and now I'm going to do what looks like two little parentheses for the base of where his legs and his butt will be. And now I'm going to fill that in completely. Okay, I'm going to have a tail coming out and over. If you're doing a cat, exact same steps, just scale down a little bit. For the head, I'm going to do another little oval up here, right on top, almost like a little snowman. And then I'm going to give him little ears. So depending on what kind of ears your little dog has, maybe you have ears that stand up, or again, if you're doing a cat, you want to do pointy little ears that stick up and do them a little bit smaller. Got a fat puppy there. I'm going to fill in a little bit more green underneath him so it doesn't look like he's floating there. Okay, use that green and black mixture. I'm just kind of filling in underneath him a little bit so it looks like he's really sitting on something and it doesn't look like he's just kind of floating in there. Okay, once you have that, we're going to put the little puppy down in the water as well with the black paint. Again, not as much thought into this, just kind of a basic shape of what you have up there, except it's going to be upside down. Little oval, and I'm just kind of brushing in a few little brush strokes. The parentheses go here. His little tail. Okay, this is just going to be his reflection upside down. Okay, and then you're going to clean off that little brush. Now comes the fun part of putting on all the little willow parts of the tree. So I'm going to clean off my brush, go into some purple paint. Now I'm going to use just the shape of the brush, and I'm going to drag it along and use that shape to make those little willow flowered leafy kind of pieces. Okay, so when I do this, I'm just using the straight purple. I'm going to do one that goes at the tip of the point of the branch, and then I'm going to brush them up and towards the branch as I go on both sides. So they're angling in, going up towards the branch. And I'm going to do that for each and every one of those, depending on how big your paper or your canvas is, or how big your brush is. It's going to be totally different feel, and that's okay. It's okay if you have some big leaves or some skinny little tiny ones. I'm not connecting any of them, and I'm not even randomly here and there touching the branch, but it's not even necessary. You can just kind of go along the side of the branch. Okay, so I'm going to fill in all of these, and then I'll do a few down here in the reflection also. So, but what my important part is that you start with an end piece right at the tip and then go up, because it gives it a nice little point to the branch as you go. Now I don't have to go all the way up into the inside of these parts of the branches. Those you can leave plain. It's just going to be at like where the bend goes and further down from there. Okay, so I'm just filling all of these in. Don't overthink it. It's a little quick brush stroke that goes in there. And I'm just going to do that to all of these. Again, I'm not going up and around the bend, kind of where the bend starts is where my little brush strokes will end. Okay, and then I'm going to add a few down into the water. I'm adding a tiny, tiny bit of black into my purple when I do that, so it's a little deeper. All right, and I'm just adding a few here and there. Don't go too crazy overthinking where they go. Just a few here and there so they look like they're blowing in the breeze and the water's moving and you've got kind of the feel of that as well. Okay, the last step I'm going to do is add a little bit of brown into that trunk and the branches of the tree right over the black. So I'm cleaning off my little brush. I'm going with a little brown paint. Just kind of brushing it in. Because I want that silhouette feeling. I don't want it to be a solid brown tree trunk. And I'm just going to kind of brush it in as I go here and there. Going here and there, brushing in on the branches. Don't worry about outlining or going on every single one. It's kind of just random. It's okay that you don't fill all of them in with that brown. I'm just kind of adding it here and there as I go. And then I'm going to do a tiny bit down here on that tree trunk. A little bit on the branch. Okay. Once you get that, that is your very last step besides signing it. So if you'd like to put your signature in the corner or your initials, take your little tiny brush with any color that you like. Put your initials down in the corner. Thanks so much for painting with me today. I hope you had a good time.